We're live.
All right. It is now 8 a.m. on July 8th, 2021. I'm calling the meeting.
Let us correct that. It is 9
It's the
a.m.
9th?
It is 9. The clock is on camp.
I know, it's 9 o'clock. I'm sorry. It is 9 o'clock. And I'm calling the meeting to order of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And let's stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America,
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We now have the roll call, please.
Chairperson Katarba,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Maldonado,
Here.
Commissioner Alford,
Here.
Commissioner Bowes,
Here.
Commissioner Holt,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Johns. Here. Alternate Commissioner Sonne.
Okay, we'll now have public comments, and we have a number of people signed up for comments, and please limit yourself to 3 minutes. And so the list starts with 11. Okay. It's gonna be a mistake.
They had the option. They had the option of making comments.
Okay.
Or public hearing, so, but you can ask each one.
Okay, Donna Hector. Donna Hector? Would you like to speak, please? Would you like to speak now? Okay.
It's your option. She would rather speak later, so.
Okay. Peter Unbasardio, if I have that any place close? Yes, sir. Would you like to speak now? Thank you. Ray Don Tilly, would you like to speak now?
Morning all. Don't worry, Jack, no papers here. It's all from the heart. I'm not going to read anything this morning, I
Is it
promise.
going to be short?
It's going to be short even. So, but I so appreciate your serving on PNC. Planning and zoning is critical to any community. The planning and the zoning, the rational. Can you hear me now?
Your 3 minutes is
Better. Thank you.
All right. I feel like planning and zoning is so critical to how a city, moves forward. And the two parcels you have for parks are especially exciting today because this has been a long time coming. And, back in 2018, when Bill Scheel asked me to reform the Parks Board, this is one step in that process that we came up with then. And, the master plan is in place. You've got a new parks board. They're excited and energetic, and they've got some dynamic plans. And I just hope y'all will give that your full support. I think, the other thing on here, the Grove at Brook Meadow is another chance where you get a chance to preserve what is great about this city and to do the best you can for citizens. And I've given you 2,000 words that I believe should have been passed out to you. I'm not going to repeat all those 2,000 words. I'm just going to tell you, you can be heroes and you can vote this down because we don't need the Grove at Brook Meadow. That's zoned for one house. To go from one house to 22, and that's what the proposal calls for. It may have 19 drawn, but it calls for 22 in the language. Is just unconscionable. And this P&Z, if it is a P&Z, and if zoning matters, and if we have a comprehensive plan, this can't proceed. I would love to see this person who has bought this property have a chance to do something with it, but 2, maybe 3, subdivide it, that would work within Brook Meadow. So.
If he couldn't adjust the mic, I certainly wouldn't be able to adjust the mic. I am just speaking as a private citizen, even though I'm on the Parks Board. And I just appreciate you guys looking at, and yeah, Lydia, sorry. Good, you didn't even hear to be offended. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, I missed you over there too. Sorry about that. Looking at the parks and considering that since 1984, in the last 27 years, the amount that has been spent on parks is negligible, and what we do have at this point has mainly come from grants, if I'm not mistaken. And as a new grandparent and knowing a number of other grandparents in the neighborhood, when the kids come over, rather than having them rattle around the house, it's nice to say, hey, would you like to walk down to the park? Because as a kid, I would spend like all summer at the park and go down there and spend hours. And for the younger families that don't have as much money, that can't pay to take their children to an expensive venue or something, the park is an amenity that they have all free access to. And I think it's time now that we do take advantage of the limited spaces that we have left in Woodcreek to do something to represent the growing demographic we have of younger people. We have about 300 school-age children accounted for in Woodcreek. About 199 of them are at WISD. Then there are another 21 some odd children in DISD. Then we have ones going to private school, and then we have a number of children that are also not of school age yet that will be growing into the usage of these parks. So I just want you to really give it some very serious thought, and I would certainly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Lynn Lamoureux.
I'm here to speak out like several other people in
Microphone,
the
please.
audience. Against,
Microphone, please.
I'm here to speak out like several of the other people in the audience against changing single-family residence zoning to high-density zoning. And there's a few points about that I'd like to make. One issue is our water. We've always had an issue with water around here. Even in Triangle Park, we have signs right now that say drought, critical condition, help conserve water by reducing your water consumption. One says 20%. The future of our neighborhood. We have a beautiful, tranquil neighborhood now, and we want to keep that preserved. If we wanted to live in neighborhoods that had cookie cutter houses with high density, we'd move to Kyle or San Marcos. We all bought in when we bought into this neighborhood to single family zoning. And that's what we would really like to keep. And we really trust that the Planning and Zoning Commission will honor this. The high density zoning would be bad for our resources with the water, our wildlife habitat. There would be no wildlife habitat. Our traffic would be worse, wear and tear on our roads that are already in need of repair, and it would reduce the quality of life for our residents. On the last survey that I saw on the wishes of the residents, the vast majority of them wanted to have low density zoning in our neighborhood and preserve this. So we really hope and trust that the Planning and Zoning Commission will represent the wishes of the residents and protect the integrity of our neighborhood and not allow high density zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Tucker Blythe? Blythe Tucker?
First of all, I want to thank all of y'all for serving. You're our neighbors. We appreciate you very much for taking on these responsibilities. Anybody that's served on a board paints a bullseye on their chest, and been in your shoes in some respects and appreciate what you do. I too want to speak to the density situation. The water situation has been mentioned already. I can't remember a time that I haven't been told to curtail my water and go on every other week or every other day or don't water at all. And in fact, you look at my yard, it's suffered greatly. But now we're going to put 20 homes out there. I don't see how that's equitable. I have a friend, my next door neighbor, that had to move to Mountain Crest. They wanted to build an additional room onto their house, but they were denied that. So they had to move because she was doing her photography. So they moved into Mountain Crest. That was one room. Now we're talking about 20 homes on 5 acres. I don't see how that's equitable. I'm aware too that congestion has already been mentioned on Brook Meadow. I've lived in Brook Meadow for quite a while, and I'm all for responsible progress. But already you can see the buildup when you start trying to get off on Brook Meadow, either turning in or going out. It's not bad, but 40 new cars is going to be a difference. And I can tell you just from my perspective, if we go do this, I'm changing my traffic pattern. I'm betting my neighbors will too. And we'll just go make the light, because sitting there at that stop sign is going to be a real problem. So right now we have condos, we have apartments, and we have businesses at the front end of Brook Meadow. You've never seen me up here. I never made a point about that. But this, to me, is a big issue. So appreciate your attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. We need to vote on the approval of our meeting minutes from April 7th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I make a motion.
All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same? Okay,
We need a roll call vote since
I'm sorry?
you need a roll call vote.
Oh, we do, okay. Sorry.
Commissioner Bowles?
Yay.
Vice Chairperson Maldonado?
Yes.
Chairperson Katarba?
Yes?
Chairperson Commissioner Alford?
Yes.
Commissioner Holt?
Yes.
Okay, we now need to vote on approval of the meetings from the the minutes from the April 14th meeting.
Have a
Sir?
minor change in those minutes. On the first page, under regular agenda, item 2, it says it refers to question 2. On the next page, that same item, they said that it was passed for question 4. We need to change the 4 to a 2.
Okay. We have that, okay. Is there a second to that motion to change?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Holt?
Yay.
Commissioner Bowles?
Yes.
Commissioner Alford?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Maldonado?
Yes.
Chairperson Katarba?
Here. Okay. Okay, moving to our regular agenda. Item number 3, public hearing to consider rezoning city-owned property, which is Woodcreek Section 2, Lot 143, R48797, 1 Champion Circle, currently zoned governmental services, G, to the designation of public park, P1. Is there anyone to speak to that?
Let's open the hearing at 9:17 a.m.
Okay.
and then ask for anybody to.
Okay, so we can just pass over that item.
No, you're going to open the hearing at 9:17.
Oh, okay,
And then now you ask for somebody to speak
okay.
for the public hearing.
Okay, at the hearing, okay.
Well, this is the hearing.
Oh, okay. And so again, is there anyone to speak on this item? So,
Okay, if there's no one to speak, you can close the hearing at 9:18.
okay, we're closing the hearing on item number 3 at 9:18. Okay. Item number 4, consider recommendation to Woodcreek City Council.
Should we be voting on each one of these?
You will have to vote on each one individually, yes.
Well,
Not number 3.
But number 3 was just a public hearing. Now,
got you.
number
That's
4
right.
is the action item.
yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And also, with the alternate commissioners here, they can participate in the discussion if they want to. They just don't have the right to vote.
Okay. Again, agenda item number 4, consider recommendation to the Woodcreek City Council to rezone city-owned property, Woodcreek Section 2, Lot 143, R48797, 1 Champion Circle, currently zoned governmental services G to the designation of public park P1. Is there anyone to speak on
Well,
that?
just for your council, your discussion.
Turn it to commission for discussion. Any discussion on this item now?
Unless anyone has something to say, I move that we approve this.
I second it.
Okay.
Speaking of,
Okay, unless someone has something to say, I move that we approve this
so
change.
the
of
motion would be to make a recommendation to
Motion
the
to
city
change.
council to change the zoning.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Roll call, please. Yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Alford,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowden,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Okay, item number 5.
Open the public hearing.
Pardon?
Open the public hearing.
Open to public hearing.
Yeah. You need to open public hearing.
I'm sorry, are there,
The public hearing will be opened at 9:20.
okay, public hearing will be open at 9:20. Okay, for item number 5.
Right.
Okay. Are there any comments from any statements from the attendees? Anything from council,
No,
from commission?
We
gotta
close it.
Close the public hearing before
Okay.
we can
We'll
comment.
close the public hearing at 9:21.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion that we
Wait.
rezone the property at Woodcreek 68, Lot 68, currently a green belt, to a public park.
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Chairperson,
Here? Yes?
no,
No, your answer.
I'm sorry, what?
Vote yes. Vote yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not here.
She's asking you to vote either yes or no.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Vice Chairperson Maldonado,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowden,
Yes.
Commissioner Alford,
Yes.
Okay. Let's see,
Now, this one is a public hearing, so we have to open
number
for number 7.
okay. Opening of the public hearing to consider a rezoning request from Ricktown 9900 Spectrum Drive, Austin, Texas, 78717, to rezone Woodcreek Section 6, Lot PT 12, acres 5.032, R141558, from Single Family 1 SF1 to Planned Development District PDD. Public hearing is now open. Anyone like to speak? Yes, please come up front. Then you. Pardon? You'll be next? You'll be next, okay? Okay, thank you.
This morning, the first thing, is it on? Okay. First thing I got up,
Excuse me, would you tell us your name
Oh,
and
I'm
where
sorry.
you live,
I'm sorry.
please?
My name is Donna Hector. I live at 10 Elmbrook Drive, which is right off of Brook Meadow. I've been here going on 6 years. I'm a retired educator. Love my house. But I found this quote this morning, first thing on my email. Our neighborhoods aren't just where we live. They are an essential part of who we are and how we connect to those around us. I was extremely disappointed and frustrated when I found the city council was thinking about rezoning this area. I think it is a violation of trust that we have placed in our government to honor the quality of life that we moved here to find. The Brook Meadow neighborhood was not created to have a high-density housing development built in it. Perhaps instead of 19 or 22, whatever it is, more units, the 5 acres could be divided better into single-family dwellings. I'm concerned, as somebody else mentioned, about the runoff. A house was built next to me this summer, and I've never had water on my patio, but the last heavy rain we had, I had 2 inches of water standing on my patio. So water is being diverted, just naturally follow the path. And I think we need to consider this, especially for those of us, it is a hill. If you drive around, it is a hill. This development will make also our traffic increased, as somebody else mentioned, and it's already overcrowded on that narrow stretch there, well, anywhere through Brook Meadow. So, but I do thank you for your time. This is pretty much a thankless job that you're doing, and it is appreciated by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent, was there supposed to be a presentation today on these proposals?
Yes, they are here, but after you have the public hearing,
Okay.
then they'll make the presentation before y'all's consideration.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Name, please.
Commissioners, good morning. I'm Phil Van Ostrand. I'm a 30-some-odd year resident of Woodcreek, and I live on Brookside Drive, down at the bottom of the hill. And since the hill has been talked about a lot to this point, let me talk about it a bit more in the context of what the developers propose to do. I had a chance to review the drawings and the submissions that you all got, particularly concerning drainage, and I was very pleased to see the depth of discussion and the depth of analysis that the developers had made to minimize or mitigate the downhill problem with drainage. So I think that's an area that I'm sure you will have questions for the developers about, and I'm sure they're prepared to answer, but I'm very pleased with what I've seen. We talked about utility infrastructure some to this point. I think it's also important to note that the provider for those utilities, Aqua Texas, Frontier, Pedernales, have all said that the addition of this development or any development in that area does fall within the range of their ability to provide service. So that does exist. Infrastructure in general, I think everybody in Woodcreek understands that the streets need to be worked on. This is not really an infrastructure issue since that street coming out of the Grove goes directly out to Ranch Road 12. Now, we can argue about Ranch Road 12 needing a stoplight, but that's not germane to zoning. The other point, the last point I'd like to make, and again, perhaps not germane to zoning, but something that should drive everyone's consideration. This change will add substantially to the city's tax base. It will add substantially to the available housing in the Wimberley Valley. Housing in the Wimberley Valley is a hard thing to come by. I've benefited, all of us have benefited to some degree or another to the appreciation of real estate values, but at some point, we have to look at a broader picture. I would encourage the commission to listen carefully to what the developer has to say, ask some hard questions, particularly about drainage. But I believe the answers are within their presentations, and I would encourage you to recommend this to council and let the wisdom of council settle how to proceed on this. And I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your service. I realize it's a terrible job to have, and I appreciate the time and effort that you spend on it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Yes, please step up. Name, please.
Hi, my name is Angela Battaglia, and I live at 21 Brook Meadow. Thank you for letting us speak today. I really appreciate that. My husband and I are here today because we do want to address the 5+ acres that will be developed into a high-density situation. And it really impacts not just, of course, our home. We've been in Woodcreek only 2 years, and the sole reason we moved here was because we love the large lots. the greenery, the environment. The neighborhood is beautiful, peaceful. So I wanted to talk to you just for a second about the growth. And I really do believe that growth is inevitable in every situation, in every community, but I think it needs to be smart growth. I don't think you can just say, hey, let's plop some houses here, let's plop some houses there and call it smart growth, because it affects so many facets of what's going on in everyone's lives that are already situated. The drainage is not a passive thing. It affects everyone. It affects every home. It trickles down, and it can have massive repercussions if we're not careful with what we're planning on doing. And I hope that you would really take that into consideration, because it affects everyone. And you may not live in this area near that 5 acres, but eventually it's going to affect everyone. And we really need to consider that. The only other thing I'd like to say is, currently we already have a high density situation going on Brook Meadow. We've got a commercial property right at 12 and Brook Meadow. We have existing duplexes and a multifamily situation with the apartment complex. Do we really want more of that, or do we want to maintain our quality of life like it is? And there's so many questions that need to be asked about just the technical aspects of building this, developing this property, and we haven't even been able to ask that yet. So we need to really stop and think about what we're about to do. And I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, so we will close the public hearing at 9:31. And we will now open the discussion to the commission in terms of considering any recommendations.
Let me give you a little bit of a background, then we'll have Rick Town come up. Basically, the city staff has been meeting with Mr. Town and his people that work with him, and they have patterned this draft agreement. Now, remember, this is a draft after the Oak Orchard Enclave agreement, which is basically has a 35% impervious cover, but it's aggregate for all the proposed housing units. So if you look at the Oak Orchard Enclave agreement, it's basically that same thing where it all looks at the aggregate. We do have also our engineer here. If you have any questions about the drainage after Mr. Town gives his presentation. So if you would, turn over the microphone to Mr. Town now.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me today. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate your time. I've been working with the city quite a bit and our engineers in developing this project. And one of the things that I'd like to address is the fact that people think we're rezoning it to a more dense, to more density. But the reality is the way it's currently zoned is it's zoned for about 15 to 20 homes anyways. The reason for the PDD is that it allows us to do other things with the property to create amenities for the neighbors. So in essence, we're putting in a pocket park. We're putting in a green belt. That's 2 of the lots. And a 3rd lot is an actual well thought out and engineered water retention facility, which will allow all runoff to be collected on site and filtered prior to leaving the site, which then would go into a creek. The property is a slope, mild slope, on all sides, except for the 53 acres where the creek resides and goes around. So in reality, there will be 0 impact from water onto neighbors' properties after we're done, because we'll collect all water, filter all water before it leaves our site. So in looking at projects like Brook Meadow, it's very important for us to address these issues, and it's something that we take very seriously. So I've hired one of the best engineering firms in the state of Texas to address these issues, and they've done a pretty good job with it, and I appreciate the gentleman prior mentioning that he looked at it and understood it, because there is a lot that goes into it. We've spoken with the purveyors, Aqua Texas and others, to basically make sure, and I was very adamant with them to make sure that we were not only going to get the capacity that we needed and the pressure that we needed, but it wouldn't impact other people. And I believe they're in the process of looking at other upgrades, and I don't know when that'll occur. They didn't make any promises, but we're not looking to come into any area and impact the neighbors more than we have to in order to create opportunity for people to move into the neighborhood. So what I'm saying is we're not a company that comes in and cuts down all the trees and we just put up as many homes as we can. We took almost 6 months to look into this and come up with a design that made sense economically, feasibly, as well as environmentally. So it is something that we take into consideration. I also want to address what I consider to be a transition from Highway 12 into the residential neighborhood. You really are starting with basically a strip mall or a little convenience center on the corner, apartments, and then you have the apartments transition to duplexes, and then you would transition into almost quarter-acre lots in an area that really can't be seen from the road. So what's nice about this particular project, it would, in my opinion, it would act as a buffer before you get to the larger lots. But you don't really see these homes. We're putting up a green belt right in the front left side, and that will block most anything that you'll see from the road. And then it becomes a private street that we believe we're going to dedicate to the city. But that private street is, in a sense, other than a couple of neighbors, no one else will see it. And those couple of neighbors have reached out to me and I've reached out to them. And we had a few discussions, but it was basically had to do with potentially acquiring properties and addressing the trees. But I have had limited time to meet with them, and I will make sure that I'm able to do that further. But the reality is we're not here to cut down all the trees. We're here to make a better neighborhood, a better community. We are a product agnostic company, meaning we don't have a product that we push out. We have drafting and architects on staff, and we design based on what we believe fits best into the neighborhood. So we will design individual homes for each lot. Our typical price range for homes that we deal with are between 1.5 and 3 million. So our product is a very high level product. Obviously, these won't be $1.5 million homes, but they'll be of the same quality by the same designers and same architects. So what I want to impress upon you today is that I want to say you're in good hands with this project. We'll do an outstanding job to make sure that everybody's concerns are addressed, which we've already done with our engineering. We'll do that with design. We'll do that through screening. What I call screening is on both sides, whether you have an existing neighbor or a new neighbor, nobody really wants to look at each other's stuff or look in each other's windows or, be overly impacted negatively by some sort of change. So we always take it upon our, make it a mission of ours to make sure that everybody has some sort of screening, whether it be a fence for the first house that comes in on the right, whether it be trees systematically placed between windows, between the couple of neighbors that are on the left-hand side and the new project. I also want to address something that I think is really important. The main reason we went for a PDD is because it allows for a greater impervious coverage ratio. And everybody says, well, you're doing it to get density, but that's not the reality. The reality is, in order for us to put in this park, to put in this drainage facility, and to put in the green belt, we have to have some sort of density to accommodate those costs. But What's more important is this: the more you increase if you adhere to the 30% impervious coverage ratio, you're going to end up with all 2-story homes. It's inevitable because the coverage ratio doesn't allow it. If you do a PDD and you have an aggregate, I'm able to do the majority single-story homes. And all of these are single-family homes, by the way. None of them are apartments. None of them are duplexes. They're all detached. They all follow the same 7.5-foot setbacks as the rest of the community. Literally, the only thing that we did the PDD for was to enable us to have more single-story homes, lessening the impact on the neighbors. So I believe that with our design, with our engineering, with our small request for a PDD to accommodate single-story homes, the park, the infiltration structure, and the greenbelt, that's really what we're here for. So I appreciate your support if you choose to support it. And I understand the neighbors and their concerns because I've been doing this over 25 years. And I've been to a lot of P&Z and city council hearings, and I've met with a lot of neighbors. And I just want to say that I appreciate your support. I would like to have Brian Parker or Bradley Wilkins come up from Kimley Horn. They're our civil engineering firm to address any technical issues with regards to water filtration or any other matters. Bradley Wilkins is going to come up and speak.
Good morning. As Rick said, I'm Bradley Wilkins. I'm an engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates out of Austin. We've been working on this project with Rick and the team for quite a few months now, and have gone back and forth with Adrian, the city's engineer, maybe a few more times than I would have liked, but we definitely did our due diligence when it came to engineering design and making sure that these concept plans were conducive and not going to cause an encumbrance on downstream properties or just the surrounding neighbors. From a drainage standpoint, as Rick said, the whole site kind of sheet flows generally from the east towards the west. And ultimately, the discharge point in the existing condition is in the creek behind us on that 50-acre property, kind of just to our northwest. In the proposed condition, what we would be looking to do is the offsite water that's currently flowing onto our site, we would capture in a series of drainage channels routed around the property, discharge it on that existing property. For the on-site flows, where you're going to have an increase because you're increasing impervious cover, as you mentioned.
Would you please address us? We're
Oh, yeah.
the ones who really need to hear this.
Sorry about that. From an on-site standpoint, the increase in impervious cover is going to be captured in a series of also channels and a series of inlets and pipes and routed to a water quality treatment structure that's going to treat water underground and maintain the high level of quality of water. And then the detention pond just immediately beyond that will detain flows to the existing condition and then discharge immediately downstream to the site and into the creek. So it won't have an impact, a negative impact on downstream properties.
So you're just putting in a retention pond, basically?
It's a detention pond, but yes. Yes.
And what type of filtration are you using?
It's called a jellyfish structure. It's a TCEQ approved inline structure to treat water as it comes through.
Speak microphone, please.
Yes. So it's an inline structure called a jellyfish that essentially treats the water as a kind of a filter system, similar to how pool filtration
Well,
system.
what are you using? You using carbon? Are you using gravel? Are you using sand?
I think it's a carbon filter. I don't know the exact specifications of that. We use a sub-consultant for that.
Well, I came out of the filtration business, so I'm a little more versed, apparently only than you are, sir.
You might be in the exact specifics of how it functions. We will use a supplier called StormTech, and they will work with them to ensure that the treatment needs are met.
Is there any kind of calculation that takes the amount of water that's retained in all and says this many gallons can equal 1% impervious cover, to kind of, that gives a numerical offset when you're asking for the 35%?
It's a little more complicated than that because there's a timing component to it, and it deals with what we're really looking for is like the peak discharge. So it's not exactly straightforward as putting a direct numerical value on an increase in impervious cover.
And, well, and your channels that you're talking about that go around to divert the flow that normally comes in and all, are those built on a calculation of a certain amount of rainfall in a certain period of time? You know,
Yes.
because we do have our rain bombs out here. And
Sure.
so, you know. That,
Sure. So those will be designed to handle the 100-year storm. And what that means is not a storm that happens every 100 years, but it has a 1% chance of occurring every year. That's the highest intensity storm. I mean, there's a 500-year, but from a design standpoint, all engineering plans will typically accommodate a 100-year storm event. So those channels will be sized and sloped to ensure they have capacity to convey runoff from that storm event.
Okay, my question would be, is this on? What is the maintenance to this filtration system? I mean, you're going to put in a filtration system. We've got a lot of silt. It clogs up. How do you maintain something like that? We're also talking about a lot of diversion of water rather than seepage into the aquifer.
From a maintenance standpoint, I know that these providers that provide these inline treatment center systems have maintenance plans that they use. And so essentially they have a truck that comes out to the property, and where we have it placed to be in a pavement section, but within kind of the little turnaround that we have, so it wouldn't be in the main flow of traffic. And essentially what they do is they come out and there's a manhole cover and they pull the filters out, and they have a special type of hose attachment that cleans them out.
Okay, who would be responsible for paying for that kind of maintenance?
I think, Rick, we'd probably need to evaluate that a bit more and determine that.
Okay, I'm thinking, are you going to establish like a homeowners association that would have to take care of that? Or?
Sure.
Yeah, we will have a homeowners association, just a small, maintenance agreement between the parties that will have to, that'd be a minimal fee because it's not much to have them come out and clean the filters. But in essence, what we're trying to do is we're trying to collect all water. We're not really impacting others. We're the beneficiary of everybody else's water. And I don't mean that negatively, but literally everything drains to this site. Behind it is a creek. So what we're trying to do is capture it. But before we capture it into the basin, you have bioswales, you have all kinds of grass, you have all kinds of channels, if you will, that's cleaning and filtering this water as it comes through. Then it has to go through an inline filtration process before it gets into the retention basin, before if it ever rose up above that, it's clean. It's as clean as you're going to get. And it's going to go into the creek. Like I said, we're collecting everybody else's water. We're not pushing water uphill. So I hope that addresses your question.
Okay, as a person that lives on the retention pond for Honk Creek down there,
Yeah.
I've seen that thing fill up really fast in one of our rainstorms. So I'm looking at it from my perspective too, with the drainage
Sure.
coming in.
And rightfully so. The only way I would be able to address that is, like I said, while that water is coming down, it's being filtered along the way. The idea is not to keep the water from ever getting off the property. It's to clean and treat the water, to rid it of silt and other potential harmful things, and then allow that water to get into the pond, rise. When it rises and leaves, it's clean.
Okay.
Silt sits at the bottom, those have to be cleaned out, and that's part of the maintenance agreement. I haven't seen a maintenance agreement because we haven't hired a company to do it. This is obviously just to see if we're going to be approved for the PDD, but it does provide a great opportunity for us to address some of the questions. And I also wanted to address any questions that you may have that aren't technical in nature, that maybe has to do with the neighbors or screening or quality of home, or why are we asking for this or that. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Let me ask this. What size homes are you planning to put on?
We're looking anywhere from 1,800 to 2,500 square foot homes. We're
So
trying to
these
get
aren't-
3 and 4 bedrooms to accommodate small families or people with children or grandchildren that want to come to visit.
So your setbacks are the same as most of the houses here in Woodcreek, majority of them, 7.5 feet on the sides, 25 on the front and back, right? Is that
Our
correct?
setbacks are identical to what everybody else is adhering to. We're not asking for a setback variation or variance, thank you, at all.
Okay. Hey, Brent, does our city engineer, do they have any issues with the drainage plan? Oh, there he is.
Morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is really a preliminary plan. I looked at the calculations and all the drainage areas contributing to the site. At this point, I don't find any issues with it. They're proposing to mitigate this flows to existing conditions. And from not only that, we want to make sure that it's not causing any erosion to any downstream properties. So after it leaves the detention pond, they need to convert it back to sheet flow. And to answer your question on the water quality on the jellyfish, it has been approved by TCQ. I think they use membranes to filter the water. TCQ right now requires a 70% removal of TSS. It's called total suspended solids. So jellyfish, I think, removes about 80 to 90% of that. So that's why it's been.
Well, it's going to, that will depend on the size of the membrane.
Yes, sir. And that's why at this point, it's really just a preliminary design. It needs to be worked out more and to make sure that it will mitigate that. But it's just a preliminary design.
Okay, fine.
Okay, I have a question about impervious cover. 35% is, sounds a little tricky. And it seems to make sense in terms of applying 35% to the entire area, the entire property. But what happens after the development is completed and the homes are built and occupied? Does the individual homeowner and property owner then take responsibility for the 35%? Or does it go back to 30%?
I think to answer that question, it stays at 35%, but it's my understanding that if they were trying to put in a swimming pool or they're trying to put in a deck or something that is hard surface and not going to allow water to penetrate, then they're going to have to get a permit for that. And they would, if their particular lot was at 32% and they could add a swimming pool and only be at 35, then that's feasible. But if not, then it would be declined. They can't raise the number above 35%.
Okay, but that decision would go back to the city to make.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I'll answer that. They would have to make application with us. We would have to look at it to see if they could actually, it would still remain to that overall 35%. But the thing is if they're sitting at 32%, they would have to reduce their impervious cover to be able to add anything else.
Okay.
So, because the 35% is the whole 5+ acres.
Yes.
So one house might be 28% if it's a 2-story house and less footprint, but another one. So
Good point.
even if an individual homeowner comes back and wants to add something, it still can't go more than 35% on the
That's right.
whole piece of property.
Now, these are 2-car garages, right? Not carports.
These are 2-car garages. If I could fit 3, I would, but that's impossible. So yeah, we're into parking and having it be convenient.
So these are single-family dwellings.
Yes, sir.
And to answer your question, they would be required to have still the 3 10-by-20 parking spaces, hard surface in front, and then the 2-car garage. Because in the zoning code, there are certain things, that number of garage spaces you have to have. So they would be 2-space garages and then 3 parking spaces.
Ms. Town, have you ever started a project and walked away from it?
That was a good question. Been doing it 25 years, and I'd say the answer is no, but I have sold a few in the middle. Yeah.
How long have you been in business here?
3 years.
And where are you building now?
La Ventana, we have 9 homes of the 1.7, $1.8 million mark in La Ventana and Driftwood. We have a few homes in Bunker Ranch and a few other places as well.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, we typically deal with a certain price range, but when I first saw the Grove there at Brook Meadow, I thought it was beautiful. And I like I told one of the neighbors, I just really like it. It's a great spot. I love the fact that there's a new sustainable elementary school that will attract young families and new growth. And for me, it just seemed like a great opportunity, not just for our group, but also for the community. Now, I know that doesn't really, not everybody's going to be excited about change or something that might impact them, but we're doing our best to make sure that we don't impact them as much as possible through screening and through water mitigation, which, like I said, is really our issue that we're dealing with, not it's really everybody else's issues that's draining onto that property and then dealing with that water. It's not going anywhere after that. That would impact the neighbors. But I do understand concerns, and I always take that into consideration. So
What's your plans for if this is approved? How long would it take you to build out 19 homes?
we could do it as less a year. We could do all 19 in a year.
So okay, so you're not talking about stretching this thing out 10 to 15 years?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we it's in our best interest to, get it done. And also for the neighbors, because, construction can make noise and do other things, but it would probably take us about 3 to 4 months to actually do all the infrastructure, maybe 2 to 3 months. And then the actual homes we could build in 9 months to 12. And so a little over a year.
Let me ask you another question. The houses that are there now that are adjacent to the property on the 1 acre, 2 acres, 3 acres, will you have a tree line essentially between their property or their houses and this development?
That's another good question. There are so many trees on this property, which makes it beautiful. There were so many trees that our tree and topo survey, we couldn't even load it on normal files because there was just too many trees. So I'm of the opinion that we'll save as many trees as possible, but that doesn't answer your exact question where they have their homes backing or abutting to this. We will put up a nice fence and we will also put trees strategically. Now, would I put them across the entire property? Probably not. It's just economically, it wouldn't make sense. And it might look overcrowded or unnatural. But strategically putting those trees between properties where any kind of visual impact would be from windows above or, you want to block all straight line visual between the two dwellings. All right.
Can you give us I know this is kind of a hard question, give us a kind of a price range?
Well, it is a good question. A lot of pro formas went into
Are we
this.
talking less than $500,000 or?
I think you're right around there. I think some will be in the 4s and some will be in the 6s, depending upon square footage. The reality is there's a price per square foot that will drive these. That's, the neighborhood currently is at about 200 to 250 a square foot, somewhere in that ballpark. There are anomalies that are large homes with acreage, 10, 20 acres, and they'll go into the millions. But our studies show that most of these homes are on roughly smaller than a 1/4 acre lots, and they're all going for around 200 to 250 a square foot if they're not dilapidated or
Based on your experience, I guess 25 years, would this upgrade the surrounding area?
Well,
homes?
Yes, price-wise, yes, it will, because these are going to be really nice homes. They're going to look like modern farmhouses, modern hill country. You're going to have really good color schemes. You're going to have great architecture. They'll look really nice. My experience in a little over 25 years is we've never done a project that didn't enhance the neighbor's value. It's always enhanced it. So if we're able to get 260, 270 a square foot, their values go up automatically. Now that doesn't account for, like I said, dilapidation or, lack of maintenance, but it's still a price per square foot gets driven up for the entire neighborhood. So I believe it will, yes.
Okay, I've got a question related to the density of the whole property. It looks like you're really trying to take advantage of every square foot of property to do something. There's no spare land anyplace, which is not a problem in its own right. But I'm trying to make better sense in terms of everyday life living there on how a hammerhead turnaround would work. Because on one of the diagrams, the turnaround is not at the end of the total property. It's in the middle someplace.
It's actually towards the end, but in reality, all of these people that will live there, this is not a throughway traffic, so you're not going to have you won't have any through traffic. There may be people that mistakenly go down there, but every single person will be able to turn into their driveway or turn out and get out. The hammerhead is actually designed, I think it's the third lot, so it's towards the end. And your question about what we're trying to do to maximize the coverage, we do have a road that has to go all the way to the end, and that takes up a lot of the coverage, if you will. But we do have a pocket park. We do have a water infiltration structure that's taken up almost an entire, what would equate to a lot. If you add that to the green belt that we have at the front left, it's greater than a lot. So the reality is we could have come in with 22 or more. We're currently at 19 with a pocket park, an infiltration structure, and a green belt. And a very nice road, which will have concrete ribbon gutters on the sides. So we're not putting in a road that's going to fall apart and everybody complains about the broken edges of the asphalt. A lot goes into these projects. A lot goes into where we've gotten today. But there's still a tremendous amount that needs to go into it from this point forward, because all you're looking at is conceptual design plans and conceptual bubbles for potential dwellings. We have to go in, our engineers will go in and actually do what's called construction documents, which then the city's engineer will go over in detail. And those documents will be how it's actually built. It'll look like this, but how it gets done will be determined later. And then same thing with the homes, although we're not building square boxes. So the reality is we have to go in and design every single one of those homes. So there's a lot that needs to go into this moving forward.
Okay, so are you saying that this hammerhead turnaround will prevent people from having to drive in reverse or pulling into other driveways in order to turn around?
Well, it's a 20-foot wide to begin with, so they could turn around if they had to on the road, but most people won't be turning around. If someone strays down there and gets down there, they're probably going to most likely use the hammerhead if they're near it, or they're going to try and turn around the street, or they're going to use part of somebody's driveway. Because these are 25 to 30 feet back. All of these lots are very deep. So they allow for large backyards. One gentleman was talking about parks, or I believe it was a gentleman here that was talking about parks and growing up playing at parks and what have you. There is a pocket park, but these are also very deep properties. They're 140, 150 feet deep, 25-foot setback in the front. You're going to end up with a 40, 50, 60-foot backyard on some of these properties. By 60 by 60 is more than most people get in new home development. So I was pleased to, I also like to play at parks, and growing up, I like to play in my backyard and do the things that kids like to do. These accommodate families like that with plenty of space in the back.
I got one other question.
Yes, sir.
You said you've been in business 3 years?
Yes.
And that's Modern Homestead LLC?
Well, I've been in business for over 25
Yes,
years.
sir, but I mean, you said 3 years here.
Yeah, but see, we do LLCs for different projects and for different areas. I do this in multiple states.
Well, I just saw where you've only been in business here like 1 year and 7 months.
Well, that's Modern Homestead, but we've been here for over 3 years, developing, moving.
But it's Modern Homestead just doing this project.
Well, I would say Rick Town is doing this project, and that's me. So I'd be happy to meet with you if you'd like.
Okay.
I'll
I was
answer
just
any of your
curious
questions.
because I did a little research, and that's what I came up with, and that's why I was curious.
Yeah, understood. No, we have built in multiple states. We've developed in multiple states. And I'd be happy to go into that detail with you if you'd like.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Brenton. You said that this was developed according to the Oak Orchard PDD format.
It was patterned after it. They actually got a copy of the Oak Orchard development. And that's where we got the aggregate for all the lots and things like that.
Okay, Oak Orchard has 10.43 acres that is part of their their land size. They currently have 15 homes on there. I drove over there. A very nice thing. But if you're looking at a 5 acre with 19 homes, I can't conceptualize this because the Tully Court, Oak Orchard area is really nice, but it's not as dense as what you're proposing.
It is from a standpoint of how close the homes are together. They have unbuildable areas. Yeah, so it's a different animal. We don't have a lot of unbuildable areas because it's a gentle slope. They have unbuildable areas. So they basically, wherever they had buildable areas, they're doing what we did. So it's very similar actually where the homes reside. We don't have additional acreage that's unbuildable, so that is why it's not exactly the same. Is that, thank you.
In various places in this draft, I understand it's just a draft, so, but it sounds like you would take preference or precedence over city activities or decisions or legislation in certain things. I'm looking at, for example, 5.3, where if the city would talk about or propose a moratorium on building, you would be exempt from that type of moratorium.
I'm not
And
familiar
I'm
with
wondering
that.
how general the district's authority would be to override decisions of the city.
To my understanding, we wouldn't be able to override any decisions by the city. We still have to go through building permits and inspections. I don't know that we would, if once we had the neighborhood, there wouldn't be massive change. But you bear with me, you had said 5.3.
Just 5.3,
5.3.
right to continue development.
Oh. I'm not familiar with that clause. Bradley may be, but these are a lot of boilerplate documents. But would to say that a neighbor would sell their home and we would continue this development, or maybe multiple neighbors would sell their home and we would maybe do a bigger pocket? Absolutely. But that has to make sense economically. But I don't know that that specific 5.3 applies to that. I would have to, maybe Mr. Lewis Branton, could you?
So I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting yet. Remind me of your name again.
Joe
Joe.
Catarbo.
I'm sorry. Joe, what it says, and I think that he accurately described it. Two things that this project would be exempt from. The city could not come in and say, you are now not allowed to develop this as a blanket statement, or carve out special exceptions and say, we're imposing specific and strict time constraints on you that aren't otherwise applicable. Now, whatever they do, and I think that the questions about the filtration and the self, that's a good example. Whatever it is that happens with this development, they'll be vigorously put through the paces, and they must meet the requirements of the city's code of ordinances. And if they don't, then everything that they do is subject to being rejected and sent back to the drawing board, and it must meet the exacting standards of the city. That will still be in place. The city's normal time constraints for approval of permits as they walk through this process, those will still apply. This simply says the city cannot, one, ban them from building, and two, place special and different and unique and heightened standards on them during the course of this.
Thank you.
If I may, I think a good example of that is the road. So we can't come in and do 2 inches of asphalt over 2 inches of base and just do whatever road we want. That road has to be inspected every step of the way and has to adhere to the construction documents that were approved by city engineers or a third party. So in essence, every single thing we do there will be, there'll be detailed documents, there'll be review of those documents, permits issued, inspections, and so we're following the city every step of the way.
If I might, you wouldn't do that anyway, because if you did, the road would just collapse on itself. So,
Yeah.
And there's part of understanding that you're not going to do something that's going to destroy your reputation.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's that, and you just don't want to have to come back and fix everything. So.
Okay,
Is-
Joe, I have another question. When you look at our ordinance 156.063, chart 2, residential zoning requirements, we don't have any requirements under PDDs. I mean, that column is blank. Why?
So what happens through this agreement is it adopts standards that would otherwise apply to a different zoning classification, and then it imputes those to these. So even though if you look at the Plan Development District zoning classification under the city's code of ordinances, you see nothing, this agreement picks up the standards from another zoning classification, says, now we're going to take those and we're going to apply them here. So they have standards that they're bound by. Same standards, like I said, the same exacting standards that you would see for other areas of the city.
So and what you're saying is in approving this PDD,
Yes.
we're opening a door to other agreements.
Oh, that door's already open. That already exists. Under the law, any developer can come in and say, I would like to do blank, and they have the right to negotiate and attempt a contract with the city. So it's not as though we're doing something unique and exceptional here. This is a very standard and common practice. An agreement like this is simply how a city, for lack of a better term, holds a developer's feet to the fire. It's say, here's this document, go forth and build, but these are the terms that you will meet, and if you don't, here are the repercussions. This protects the city as much as anything else.
And if I may, in going through this for several months, certain road widths, certain ribbon gutters on the sides, the park, there was a lot of input and negotiation back and forth with the city, and they were pretty adamant that they wanted specific things, and we did our best to accommodate. I think we all came to an agreement that this is where we are. We addressed the water, we addressed the road width, we addressed the ribbon gutters on the side, we addressed the channeling of the water through bioswales, we addressed the infiltration structure, the green belt. So there was a lot of input that the city was, in a sense, holding our feet to the fire. But I think it was a pretty easy one because we were trying to make the best project we could as well. So in reality, we did work with the city, and they had a lot of requests along the way.
Are there going to be any new taxes or fees attached to the properties, especially to take care of any of the green belt areas or things like that? Or is all that revert to the rules of the city?
Well, the road, I think, will go to the city. But as far as the maintenance of the infiltration structure, we're going to put a nice little wall up in front of the property, some fences. All that maintenance, I believe, will be part of a joint maintenance agreement or a small HOA. If that was a small HOA, as a developer, I'll leave funds behind so that they have a buffer, whether it be $5,000 to $20,000. It's a number that basically says this will handle most everything for the next 10 to 20 years, especially if the city maintains the road. With regards to the HOA fee, if it was a small HOA, it would be $20 a month for these people, maybe. It wouldn't be a big number, especially if we left a buffer to cover most maintenance costs and agreements.
My question to the city manager, are they allowed to do that, set up an HOA for this? Okay.
What kind of deed restrictions would you put on that? I understand this a little bit because of where I live. I live in an area that's not a PDD, but we do have a homeowners association. And one of the things that was happening is most of the properties were going to rental properties. And we had to go back and address that because our property values were going to tank because we were going to get into 50% rental property.
Yeah, I understand the concern about rental properties. These are being built to sell. I'm not holding any myself as rentals, and so we're going to sell to individuals. But with regard, your rental question threw me off a little bit. It made me think about.
It's just that I'm thinking all of these things down the road.
Sure.
Everybody that is sitting out here in the audience.
Can I jump in? One, I want to make a clarification. Are you looking at putting in place deed restrictions or simply creating a maintenance association?
Well, the deed restrictions, can you give me an example?
Okay, so you can look at two different things under Texas law, and a common phrase is HOA. And I think people think of that as some governing body that has authority. Generally, walk yourself through the progression. U.S. Constitution, U.S. law, Texas Constitution, Texas law, city law, HOA. And so you work your way up, they control going down. What you'll see in a lot of neighborhoods that have common infrastructure or facilities is something that's called a road maintenance association. That's not an HOA, although some people will call it that. But they've got these common assets of a road, and so people will pay into the kitty to make sure that the road is maintained. In this case, what it sounds like he's talking about is this common asset in this filtration system. And there will be an association created where the residents that directly benefit from that will pay in on a monthly basis to ensure the maintenance of that infrastructure so that it stays up to par and doesn't create problems moving forward. Now, just because he calls that an HOA doesn't mean that it's an HOA. It's simply a maintenance association that imposes an obligation on the homeowners to pay for this thing and make sure that it's in good condition. On an HOA, I suppose if he wants to create an HOA that imposes restrictions on things like rentals or whatever it would be, he could try. But the city's code of ordinances would still control. The city, because this development is taking place with the city is the one in charge. And anything that they do is subject to our code of ordinances. And so, in my opinion, anything that they would do along those lines would probably be very duplicative and really unnecessary, because we've got the rules in place in the city. We've got people that can enforce those rules, and it would be probably more cooks in the kitchen than would be necessary.
If I may, because as you were talking, it made me think of one thing. I've seen people paint houses colors that are not pleasant. I don't care what they say, they were never pleasant to begin with. But in a situation like that, we typically put some kind of restriction that you stick within certain color schemes. But I think these are details that will have to be worked. These are details that will be worked out towards the end of this project as you get attorneys involved and you're basically writing up the deed restrictions or POA, HOA, joint maintenance agreement, some sort of binding terminology in their deed that makes them adhere to this. It's really premature to say that now, but the reality is I wouldn't want people having, in a neighborhood like this to have free will to put up something that just is very unpleasant or paint something a color that they love, but no one else can stare at it, It's horrible. So we'll make sure that they can't go do something that's going to impact all the neighbors. I just don't know the vehicle of which we'll use to do that at this point.
Take a look at section 4.9 of the agreement. What I think it imposes a burden on the development to have any restrictions reinforce the provisions of this section. And I think what it does is it requires them to meet the city's standards. And if they ran afoul of that, I think that would give the city some good degree of recourse to ensure that they didn't run afoul of the city standards.
And on the way in, I saw a sign, so I do know that the city has the power to put stop work orders on projects, because I saw one coming in. And I've had a few, but over mild things typically, and we adhere quickly because they'll stop you and So you are following, Kent had said, it goes uphill from the developer to the HOA to the local, state, and federal. And all those rules have to be followed. And I appreciate the question that the member had where he said, are you adhering to the same setbacks? And the answer is yes. And are these single-family dwellings? Yes. They're nice, single-family dwellings that have the exact same setbacks as everybody else. Are their properties 1 acre in nature? No. But that's not the reality of what that project is zoned currently. Is zoned for much less than 1 dwelling per acre.
I guess a question is, I guess an individual describing what's density. Density is, are the lots up in Woodcreek North, 25 feet. You can build a house. One being built right now from a pet sitter, 25 feet, 5 feet from next house, building right now. That's density.
That's density. Or
So
row
it-
housing.
So it's, it's an opinion, I guess, question. I guess we're open just to comments now. Is
Well, I
that?
have a question to Brenton and maybe Bud. This is based on some of the things, either letters that were submitted, citizen letters, or comments I've seen on social media. But it is my understanding that if a PDD is granted and for some reason Rick decides not to do it and sells it, everything assigned to that PDD conveys with that piece of property going forward.
Where's the provision in here? It is in here, binding assignment.
6.1.
This, yeah, 6.1. You're right.
Okay.
I suppose if Rick were a nefarious guy, and I don't think he is, he can't take this contract and assign it to New Homes LLC and then somehow obliterate this agreement in the proceeding. No, I mean, this is binding on the heir successors and assigns so that the intent of the original contracting parties stays in place.
Yeah, it's not an agreement with me. It's an agreement for the
Well,
property.
that's what I understood. I just really wanted that
Yeah.
stated publicly.
Yeah, and I've kind of seen other things that are floating around, and they're not all factual. So
Okay, I have one more question. All right, you keep alluding to that this piece of property is on single family 1, could have up to 15 homes, the way it's zoned?
I'll let Brenton answer that question, but I believe it is zoned to be more than 1 per acre, which I've kind of heard people speak to. Is that correct?
It is owned single family 1. And as you know, most of the area that the city has are single family 1 zones. So there's nothing that keeps a property owner from subdividing their own property to create another one. So, we might have somebody that has 3 acres out there. They might say, well, I want to subdivide another 2 acres off of that to make single family homes there. But they're still single family homes. They could put as many homes on there as long as they met all the requirements.
All right, what is the minimum single family 1 lot size?
There are in the code, there are 2 sections. One says 12,000 square feet or less. So 12,000 square feet is in one section. I can look it up for you. But then there's also in this other subsection, it talks about single family homes that are less than 12,000 square feet for the lot. So basically, almost everyone, what the camp owns out here, they're basically 70-foot front. We're talking about 65-foot front here.
Brandon, is there any legal document, and I've seen this in social media, I don't know where these people get these ideas from, that this property is deeded only for 1 home?
No.
Or 5 homes?
There was discussion, I believe, with the previous property owners that was what the original property was purchased, saying it's going to be possibly 1 home plus 2 other ones.
That's, I mean, somebody's discussion, but not,
But there's no legal document that I know of that says that that's the only thing it can be, because it is the zone single family one.
yeah, I went back and looked at the Hayes County. I think it was almost 30 years ago, 1993. It shows 5 acres, but it doesn't show anything about, one house on 5 acres. So that's kind of never mind.
Are you saying that information on the web is not all true?
It kind of stirs us up a little bit, doesn't it?
Okay, do we have other questions for our guests? Okay, thank you, and I'd like to turn over the, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you asking me or everybody? Oh, sure.
So I'm Mike Battaglia. You met my wife Angela. We bought a property that abuts to this 5 acres. We predicted there were going to be houses built there, so we put up a privacy fence. It's great. The 15-foot drainage easement runs along our property, around this whole property that you're going to develop. And my question is, who's going to maintain the 15-foot drainage easement? It looks like the drainage of the lot works beautifully to your pond, but who's going to maintain that all the way over the years after you've sold everything and moved along? Each house has that 15 feet they need to maintain, right? So what if they start doing landscaping on that 15 feet drainage easement and starts interrupting the drainage? Who's going to mow it? If some lots mow the grass and don't, it's going to affect that drainage going back to your pond. So what kind of, Mike Battaglia, so who's going to maintain that or guarantee that it's maintained over these many years in the future?
Give the microphone over to him, please. Thank you, sir.
I was just asking Mike to point out, Mr. Battaglia, where the 15-foot, okay, so these slope that way.
Right, I understand, but it's got to run this way.
Well, the way this property is shaped or contoured is all the water is coming towards the center. And the reason why that drainage filtration structure took up that lot right there is because that's the lowest point on the entire property.
What's the point of this?
I think that's mandated by the city. Yeah, so it's not a.
Okay,
Brett,
right.
This is a 15-foot drainage.
I assume that this is supposed to work.
It goes
So
this
you're
way.
saying
though.
it's not necessary. What's the point of it?
No, it is necessary because this,
No, it is.
so in the existing condition, this water sheet flows from the east onto the site. And so we don't mix what's considered offsite water with onsite water.
Okay, so-
This
so
is swale
all these
there.
lots in the future, you're out of there, you've sold it. They start laying this thing. Okay, and that's going to interrupt that drainage. So you're saying it doesn't need to work, but he says it does.
No, I was just saying that the city typically has a requirement for that easement in the back of the property.
Okay, excuse me, we need to have this discussion with the commission, sir. This is kind of a detail. Maybe you want to also raise down the line with the city council because it's your particular property. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we got a time limit too.
Do you-
I just want to bring it up. So who's going to maintain this over many years?
Do you, okay, so one, what I would say is if you want to get a copy of the easement, an easement exists to do a couple things, well, several things, but it provides rights that extend beyond the property. The best answer to the question would be, let's get a hold of the easement and let's see who the easement is intended to benefit. And then once we get that answer, we can see, is it the city? Is it the neighboring property owners? Because you, as a neighboring property owner, may have the right to enforce particular standards for maintenance of that easement. But the best answer is, let's get that easement, the actual document that's filed in the real property records. And I think the city would be okay with us working through that and looking at that together.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Discussion by commissioners.
Yeah, I just-
We came up with a recommendation.
Well, I just want to make a couple comments. There are 10 people that signed up objecting to this, and I'm surprised not 16. It's human nature. A personal experience, when we bought a lot, almost half acre 7 years ago, the neighbor on the end thought that the city had sold the lot to me and went screaming down to City Hall, matter in hell. And Barbara, the secretary, called me and said, Mr. Bowes, would you please go down there and calm them down? I said, calm them down for what? They don't want you building because it's going to take the trees away. And next door neighbor, John Bowman, who still lives there, next door, is a good friend of mine. I went and showed him the drawings of the house. He was madder than hell. Hey, I'm going to be looking at your house, not instead of trees. So, you know, those individuals, but you know, over the years, it just died out. So it's human nature, you know, to object to something that's being built, you know, built by you. I mean, I experienced it, and you know, and so it's just human nature to go through this sort of thing with individuals that see something that's changing in their neighborhood. So what I recommended, Joe, you know, there are 5 questions here that were signed. Well, the questions or comments by 10 individuals. It doesn't humor me at all to see that 10 individuals individually signed a document saying they lived in Wimberley. I mean, did they really see what they were signing? Every one of them says Brook Meadow Drive, Wembley, Texas. We're in Woodcreek, not Wimberley. I mean, I'm not humored about it. Some people laugh about it, but you know, when you see something like this in bold letters, have you really read what you're about to sign? Anyway, I would suggest we address each one of these areas, you know, and you know, and have a discussion about them. There are 5 items there that these 10 individuals are concerned about. Is that a proper thing to do?
Well, you know, in our 2030 plan, you know, like 80% of the people who voted on that wanted low density housing.
But see,
Well,
what is low
that's a
density?
plan that was put together, and our citizens decided that's what they wanted.
What is
I'm just giving you a number, Jack.
But what does low density mean? Does that mean 1 house and 5 acres?
Well,
What does it mean?
Well, it might not mean 19 and 5 acres either, though.
I don't know what it means.
Well,
I mean, the other house we had, I lived next to Kathy, 15 feet away.
high density apartment homes, they wanted 1%. Medium density wanted 20 some odd percent.
Well, I don't know what the definition of low density
Maybe
is.
it's something we ought to find out.
I don't know what it means. It's no closer than the house.
Then every house you drive down Woodcreek, Brook Hollow, most of them are 15 feet apart.
These are the
And some
same.
of them only had 5-foot setbacks. When they were built, they're only 10 feet apart. Do we consider the whole city high density then?
Well, that's, this was a vision
Well,
of
I know,
somebody
but
that
there's
should
no
have been more
measurement-
specific.
There's no
Yeah,
measurement to that to
Yeah.
quantify that.
yeah. That's what I said. It's something we need to find out.
In regular conversations with residents, and if the term comes up, high density, they usually, in people's minds, refers to multiple housing, more than one family per house, so duplexes or apartments or condominiums,
That's my,
more commonly than just distances.
Standard lot.
these
standard
houses are separated 15 feet. Same as, I don't know what the percentage of the houses in this neighborhood are. 15%. I mean, not
Okay,
15,
to pursue your suggestion of going over, I guess there are 6 items that were
Yeah.
brought up. One's on the next page. Would you like to go through them and consider these as recommendations or respond to these as
I think we ought to
recommendations?
respond to them.
Sorry?
I think we ought to respond to them.
Okay, we can do that.
So go ahead, Joe.
And okay, we above landowners request, the will not, 1, harm the environment by cutting down the majority of trees. Sir.
Yes, the only trees that will cut down are the ones where the road goes in the exact house. I currently in La Ventana, the HOA, sorry? Oh, no, it's not. There's over 1,000 trees and the majority of them will remain. But One of the things that we did in La Ventana, and we were commended for by the HOA, Miss Luann Levy, is that we didn't cut down. You see these developers go in and they're building a home and they cut down every tree within the building envelope and everything in front of it. We leave 5, 6, 10 trees. We leave everything that we can in front of a property because I think it makes it look mature and nice. And you know, those trees are, if you had to replace them, be $10,000, $20,000 a piece. So why not leave them? It's a little inconvenience, but we work around it. So I try and keep every single tree that I can, and you have my word, that's what we'll do.
Well, any lot that you build on, you got to knock trees down.
Yes, sir. But not
Mostly.
800 trees. Yeah, there's over 1,000 trees on this property.
Mr. Town, what is the smallest lot that's proposed? What's the largest lot and what's the average lot size?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, what the smallest, largest, and average. I think they're all pretty similar. So if you took one of being 65 by 145 would probably be the average. I think they're between 140 and 150 in length and depth. And I truly appreciate some of the statements made by some of the council members or commissioners that essentially a lot can be 20 feet wide or it could be 200 feet wide. But if your house is at 7.5 foot setback, you're that close to your neighbor. So if you're adhering to those setbacks, and that's what 80% of Woodcreek is, we're not asking to put these, we're not asking for 0 lot lines. We're not asking for multifamily. We're not asking for duplexes or triplexes or row housing or apartments or anything like that. So these are really nice single family homes that will be set back from the neighbor, exactly what 80% of Woodcreek is or more.
Okay, the second item on the residents list, the development will not create a congested ingress, egress. How would you
Yeah.
answer that?
I think you have to take that as a whole. And whenever you add housing, you're going to add traffic. Some states require traffic mitigation studies, others don't. It's really a matter of, you know, are we adding 500 homes? No, but that's not an area that you could do that. So to add 19 homes to a street, I wouldn't know the exact impact that would have. I would be negligent in saying that I did. I've done plenty of these projects and they don't typically have a negative impact per se, but there are more cars. And that's one of the things that you can't stop. I mean, it is what it is.
Mr. Town, I went over and visited with Mr. Miller. We were standing in the driveway and you haven't even built the 19 homes and there was a traffic congestion there that day with all the construction people, and it was congested there. And you've got those duplexes right there. You know, Mr. Miller's property is sitting right on top of that. He's got a single family home there on a good amount of property. And it looks like y'all are all going to share that same little driveway thing, and it looked pretty congested there.
Well, I think the reason for that is there's building going on right next door for the duplexes. There's whenever you have construction and it's on a corner like that, you're always going to have congestion. I've been there many times and I can't speak to the traffic patterns because I haven't been there. Obviously not as 1/1,000,000th as much as Mr. I'm sorry, name skipped Mr. Miller. But when you have construction going on, our construction will be confined to that area. It'll be inside the project. Now, will they have to enter and exit? Yeah. And that's, I can't avoid that. I can't helicopter trucks in and stuff. It's impossible. But again, you have temporary, things that you have to negative impacts, noise and traffic when construction's going. Yeah. Absolutely. And I do my best to accommodate, but that's a very hard thing to control. That's why I think time is of the essence and getting in and out is most important. On a side note, I mean, I'm very interested in other properties at a reasonable fee. And if people feel that they're being super negatively impacted, or they just don't want it, then I'd be very open and I'd be happy to pass my number around to, for discussion. So if people don't
Okay, the third request, neighbor's request, that the development will not produce lower valued homes, attracting greater short-term rentals against the intent of the neighborhood. That's
Well, short-term rentals aren't permitted anyway, so that one goes away, and obviously these not low-valued homes.
Also, I think at this price point, you wouldn't be able to cover your costs unless you paid cash or a substantial down payment to have rent cover your loan. So I don't see that as being a,
the next concern by the neighbors, one we've talked quite a bit about, to manage, the development will not manage the water runoff better than simply throwing it onto neighboring property and possibly flooding homeowners within its own development.
impossible on this project, and we've already addressed that.
And number 5, the development will not create a high-density, narrow access situations that is both a fire and a crime hazard.
Crime hazard?
More houses, more thieves, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe. The whole front there, there's an easement there that Mr. Miller and this project would share. But I'm very open to widening that or creating space, or it's not even, I don't even think it's paved right now. We'll definitely pave it, dress it up, clean it up. And if Mr. Miller would like a nice private wall or we've already discussed private fencing and stuff with Mr. Miller or Mrs. Miller. We'll do our best to accommodate. We'll make it look very nice, and we'll screen it, and we'll also dress up the front. And if we can take advantage and give them their own private access, absolutely. Whatever is within our rights and working with the city that accommodates the Millers, I'm all for it.
Okay, and the final request from the group of neighbors, development will not enter into a vague concept contract with the city that then gives detailed control solely to the city manager through administrative amendments.
I think that's impossible too, and I think it's been addressed by the city council, legal counsel, that is not the case.
That's been addressed. That's not the case.
Okay.
Joe, on your on the first issue of density, Brenton and I were doing a little quick homework over here.
Right.
The largest lots in Woodcreek are on Champion Circle.
Well, if you look at Champion Circle and all those lots have been built on just recently, these are comparable to that same size lot.
I think the understanding is in Champion Circle, those are the lowest density. That is the lowest density area in the city of Woodcreek. And these lots, from a square foot size lot analysis perspective, are on par with Champion Circle. So they would be among the lowest density lots in the city of Woodcreek.
Okay, thank you. What do we recommend?
Well, I just want to
Motion
make,
or recommendation?
well, I just want to make a couple of comments. I'm sure it'll stir up the audience here, but I look at this commission that needs to do what is best for the city. And that sometimes trumps individuals, unfortunately, but that's the way it works. It offers 2 things. One, it offers housing that's really critically needed. In the last 10 years, things have really dramatically changed in this area on housing. Who would have dreamed 10 years ago we'd be in this situation? Of course, Austin is driving it. So housing is an issue. The other one is this city runs, its finances are derived from 90% property tax. We don't have much retail. ETJ is never going to offer us much. We don't get a penny from those people, and we probably won't for who knows. So our property taxes are the ones that support this city. I from my personal standpoint, my house is paid for. I got an attractive retirement. So if the city taxes go up, I can handle it. A lot of you people in this audience probably can too. But I'm thinking about the majority of the people in this city that have got home mortgages, car payments, kids in school. and trying to save for college, they're the ones that get hit in the butt by city taxes going up. These 19 homes offers a very attractive property tax revenue. And to walk away from that, I think, is really financial suicide. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I can assure you that everybody in this city, their taxes are going to go up anyway, Jack.
I know that.
So,
I know that.
that's
I know that, but this helps.
It doesn't
This
matter if
helps.
you've got kids in school or cars or house, all its taxes are going up.
Surely.
Yours has, mine has, and everybody else in this room has. And if they get more money, it's still going to go up. So that's a ridiculous statement over there to make. And it's not our business,
So,
it's not our
Jack, is
business
that-
to collect taxes for the city. It's our business to look after the citizens of Woodcreek.
Could we turn your sentiment into a recommendation, motion to city council? That's what
I
we
make a
need to do.
motion that we approve this rezoning.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'll make a motion. How would you say this, Brenton?
If I'm reading what you're saying, your recommendation would be to the city council to rezone from a single family one to a PDD.
I make that motion to rezone from single family one to a PDD. Is that correct? To the city council.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I just want to make a statement. I'm an alternate. I don't have a vote in this today. But I need to ask the lawyer one question.
Sure.
We have a protest that's duly executed by more than 20% of the owners within 200 feet of that. Is the Planning and Zoning Commission held to Section 212.015 of the Local Government Code for replats? I know City of Woodcreek Ordinance 156.157 only applies to the council. I just need to know before they vote,
Council.
just council.
Council.
And I want to thank all of those people that took their time to write the letters, to execute this. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? We need a vote. Yes?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Commissioner Holt,
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Is there any other business for the commission today? If not, then I will end the meeting at 10:47. Again, thank everyone for coming.